what's the point of planning goals, planning anything when life is so unpredictable? Things are going to change anyway. We're about to have a baby, and there's just so many unknowns with that. It's hard.
There's a ton of resources out there on how to grow money, how to grow wealth. But for us as Christians, we have the Holy Spirit. We plan around finances differently than how the rest of the world does. Some really practical things is
I just have to share really honestly, like God's been really convicting me about the power of
super personally, just like opening up my journal a little bit. So
Hey friends, thanks so much for being here. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to make sure to remind you wherever you're tuning in from, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, to hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, because that is the best way for you to not miss new content that we're coming out with to help you live an authentic, free, thriving, holistic life through God's perspective. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's dive in.
hey guys.
Hey.
So this is going to be our last episode of the year. We were planning on releasing an episode on Christmas Eve, but we thought, okay, I think
No one's going to be
no
listening.
one's going to be listening and or maybe you are, but we decided not to. And it might also be a few weeks or even months until we release another episode because we are expecting a newborn
Yes.
very, very soon.
Gonna
And
come anytime, any day now.
yeah, seriously.
We just want you to know that we're still invested in this podcast. We're not leaving forever. We're just taking a little time to be in our newborn bubble and focus on the transition of becoming parents. So we would really appreciate your prayers by the time you're listening to this because we're probably going through the very steep learning curve.
Yep, for sure. So that brings us to today. So we're going to talk about how we plan our new year in the midst of uncertainties, in the midst of unknowns. And having a new child, being first time parents, is definitely an unknown for us. Even preparing to be a parent, like watching all these classes, like how do I change a diaper? How do I know if the baby's fed? It's like, wow, no one teaches you these things. So there's definitely a lot of unknowns and uncertainties. But Grace and I, yesterday on our date, we talked about just the past year in 2024 and then what we want to see next year. And so we want to invite you into this conversation to let you know how we do it and how we do it in the midst of uncertainty and unknowns.
The backstory of this is also like, I think a lot of us, and I used to be this way too, like, we think, what's the point of planning goals or setting goals or planning anything when life is so unpredictable? Things are going to change anyway. And especially like in our unique situation where like we're about to have a baby and there's just so many unknowns with that, a really big change. So it's hard. It's really hard. Honestly, I was at a loss like a few weeks back. I was like, all right, we're going to put together our annual goal setting guide because we've been doing that for the past 2 years and people have been finding it really helpful. And by the time this is out, we'll have a new edition for 2025. But I was thinking to myself, like, this guide doesn't serve the purpose of our unique season right now because there's just like so many things we cannot predict and our schedule, our energy, just what life is going to look like is going to shift drastically and we can't concretely know what it's going to look like right now. And it's going to change as well. Just to start out, like why this is so important really is because it's about stewardship. A few years back, actually when Alex and I were still dating, we started doing this as an annual kind of ritual or routine where we would just talk about like what goals are we setting, what's our word of the year. And I found that to be really helpful because without doing that, you kind of just go into your new year kind of like going with the flow. You're not intentional about what you want to grow in or what you're asking God for. You don't have focus. You're just like going with whatever is already happening. And so previous to that, when I didn't really set, annual intention/goals, it was really hard to know like how to grow because I'm reacting to what is happening around me, like all the demands of work, going back into, like my routine, the hustle and bustle, rather than starting out with a clear like vision of this is what I really believe God is calling me to grow in. And this is how I'm going to tackle that. And this is what I'm going to do to partner with God in that. And so it really is about stewarding our lives and the gifts and the resources, opportunities, but also just being attuned to what God is speaking to us, like listening to Him, inviting Him into our lives and our plans and our decisions, and really submitting all of that to Him and following Him. And so we're going to break that down. Like, what does that really look look like. I think a grounding scripture just to remind us how fleeting life is and how we really should just take this seriously is Psalm 90:12. It says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And so we really need to remember like life is short. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. It's kind of morbid, but it's true. We really have to seize the day, as they say, carpe diem, and know that our time here on earth is so precious. So how can we be cognizant of how God wants us to live our lives and steward our year and not just be passive and let life happen to us, but really be intentional and focused on like what we're doing.
Yeah, even though this is easy to understand, it's hard to grasp. I just want to reiterate again, Psalm 90:12. Teach us to number our days. Even for me, I feel like I'm healthy, like I feel great. I exercise, I'm athletic, I eat clean food, like I feel fine.
You feel
Like
like you're gonna live forever.
I feel like I'm gonna live forever. I feel like I'm invincible. I don't say that out loud, but
Right.
I don't even really think about death like that as a possibility. But just like scrolling through social media, there like people have posted like, oh, so and so has passed away suddenly, and you don't know if that's gonna be you. Like I can do everything to control my life, like drive carefully and don't drink and all the things that we can control we do, but at the end of the day, God is the only one that knows when is your expiration date.
Right.
And so it's so important to really live life with wisdom. And it doesn't mean like cram everything in all at the same time. That's not
Anxiously.
like anxiously doing that, but like, yeah, live wisely, but also understand you're not going to live forever. There's a lot of young people who default to like in their hearts and minds, they say, I'm going to make a lot of money right now. And so I can retire early. Early, subjective, like 40s, 50s, whatever. But honestly, that's like life is meant to live right now. Like I was talking with a pastor at our church and I was taking a financial stewardship class, and I just had a chat one-on-one with him, and I was talking about our finances and how I feel a certain way, and basically just in so many words he said, "Why would you even consider taking a job that pays more if you don't even like it?" And he was basically implying you got to live your purpose now. It's not for
Hmm.
later. It's not well, like why like work in something you don't really like, or it's like man, and then you choose to live out your purpose later, whatever your purpose is, right? That's another podcast episode to unpack. So all this to say, I'm all about long-term planning, but I think long-term purpose is even more important.
That's a clip right there.
That is a clip.
Yeah, I mean there's a reason why the Purpose Driven Life is like one of the best selling books
It
out
is
there.
the best
Besides
selling book
besides the
besides the
Bible.
Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy for us to put off life until later or someday, but you just truly never know. And that's why I'm so grateful that I did have, if anyone has heard our previous episodes where I've talked about this, where I'd had my health scares, and especially that one really like sobering one where I realized, oh my gosh, if I died literally right now, I would have so many regrets. And so you don't want to have a health scare happen to you like that to make you realize. But by God's grace, sometimes He will make things happen where we're like suddenly shocked and life is forever changed because we realize how fleeting, how precious life is, and how we just can't keep putting living off until later. So, going back to goal setting, so it really is about this stewardship mindset, about stewarding your life, but how do we do goal setting when there's so much unknowns? And I think there's so many different methods and strategies and formulas that people have come up with to set goals. And in previous years, I have to admit, I think because it was inspired by another person, her template that I took inspiration from and then I modified to adjust to what I felt like worked for us and then just shared with other people. But I just have to share really honestly, like I've been really convicted. I mean, both Alex and I have, but I think especially for me these past few weeks, God's been really convicting me about the power of simplicity. It's not what you do as much as how you're doing it. It's about your heart. And so we can pull all the bells and whistles. We can do this very extensive formula. There's nothing wrong with, a thorough plan or template. We love templates, we love formulas, but at the end of the day, we don't need that necessarily to experience God's powerful work in our lives. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. We're like, oh, we need to like fill out this 10-step formula, this 10-step plan. But yeah, I just felt when I was asking God about how are we going to approach goal setting in our amidst all these unknowns, like the word simplicity just kept coming to my mind. And we'll share about how that looked for us. It was very different this year than our typical year. But I just wanted to emphasize that it's really not about, just striving on our own. Like I need to check off all these boxes to make up the perfect plan. But it's really about just inviting God in, being honest with him about where we're at and really listening, like really being open, like having an open heart to listen and to just follow like how he's guiding us. It's really simple. That's basically it is you ask God, you listen, you reflect with him, you do this with him. And we talk about this a lot in our course and our programs, but you can do so much more with God than you could do on your own. And our 10 things that we do on our own is less effective than one thing with God. And so it's really about just being intentional about that and having that open heart to him. And as I was, praying about this episode too, in the spirit of simplicity, I was like, God, what is the principles? Because I really feel like it's not, again, about like do these 10 things, but it's about how do you posture your heart in the right way as you do this, with God. And God just like revealed to me this like revelation. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so key. And we don't talk about it in the church enough. It's really two things: submit and commit. In Proverbs 3:5-8, we talk about this a lot. It's one of our favorite verses. It's a key verse. If you trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to him, then he will make your path straight. And we hear this verse a lot as Christians, but it's like so easy to be like, what does this mean? Like, how do I actually live this out, right? First of all, I think this is so easy it's one of those things, as Alex was kind of saying, it's so easy to just like pass off as like, oh yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, I believe that. But like actually doing it is the hard part, right? We're so used to being in control, or we want to be in control, or we are just taught all these things from the world. There's so many voices all around us. You are the determining person of all these things and you're in control. You are the captain of your own ship. So it's so easy for us to fall into the opposite of this verse. And also, submitting to God takes humility, takes actual trust and faith, and surrendering our own pride, really, and our own control of what we think would be best, or what we think, like, I need these 10 steps in order for this to work. It takes faith to trust in God's 1 or 3 steps over your own.
This verse has been on my Instagram for so long, but honestly, as you were talking about that, I just reflect on my life, and I've been following God for the past like 10 years or so, and this verse is true. I was having a conversation with a friend like many, many years ago, and he was talking about this verse, how if we submit to him and his ways and lean not on our own understanding, he will make our path straight. And he was illustrating that the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, if we were to do it on our own, by our own wisdom, by our own understanding and our own ways, it would be crooked. But God makes it straight. And
Right.
so I would
Exactly.
just say, like, as a mini testimony, when I submitted to God in terms of my heart and also in the practical things, how I work, how I show up to coworkers, how I steward my finances, how I give, how I forgive people, like God literally just multiplies, and
Yeah.
he has exponentially, I don't even know how to say it. Like he has exponentially blessed me in ways that I never would have thought. Like I never thought I would get married younger than I thought I would. I never thought I'd make so much money in the time that I did, and like so on and so forth. And so we're not prosperity gospel people at all, but I'm just saying, just trust in his word, and it has proven to come true. Not always in our own timing, but it is true, and God is faithful.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't play many video games anymore, but it reminds me of those games where you're like trying to figure out the path and then you get this like bonus, what is it called? Like feature or reward. I don't I sound
I think I
so
know what you're
old
talking
right now.
about.
But yeah, basically something that expedites like, oh, take the shortcut
Oh,
or
like a level up?
Kind of. I'm thinking more like a secret door opens that you didn't know was there, but like because
Oh,
you
yeah, yeah, that happens a lot in RPG games.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm thinking of that and how yeah, God really can do such amazing things that we could never do ourselves when we submit to him. And yeah, it really means like we acknowledge too that he knows what is best. Like we just don't know what's best. We have such limited, finite understanding and perspective. And God is the creator of the whole universe. He created literally life itself and reality itself, time and space itself. So I think sometimes we forget how amazing, how big God is, and how he really can be trusted with all these things. And so, what does submitting really mean? I want to differentiate submitting versus committing, which we'll talk about after this. But submitting really is about just surrendering control and aligning with God's will, with his heart and his will before or during your planning process. So it's a little similar, like a loose analogy, right? Would be you're trying to plan your OKRs at work, your or KPIs, whatever three-letter acronym you use at your job, but you're trying to plan like goals for your team, and you report to someone like a manager or a director. Like it would be smart, right, to like start an initial conversation with them about, oh, I'm about to start like planning. Like, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What do you think is important for our team or our company or our organization, right? Versus you just like in your little silo trying to come up with something without consulting like the person who has a higher level vision than you. Not to equate those people with God, but it's a little bit similar to that where we need to ask the person, God, who has a much higher level vision of what's going on and his bigger plans and picture before we even start. And in this process too, we can invite him in and let him guide us. And so what does it really look like? We have two practical tips. Number one is just what I said is to pray for guidance before and as you plan. So instead of what a lot of us do, we tend to make plans, make an agenda, and then ask God, please bless this agenda. Please bless my plans. Start with talking to him about it first and asking him. So you can ask God, one example is God, help inspire me with your thoughts, help guide me in this time, lead me in a way that aligns with your will. And it doesn't have to be super fancy. You could just literally take a few seconds to just be prayerful and invite him in. And also, like I was saying, just surrender your plans to him. You know, be open to, what do you think, God? Like, how do you want to redirect? Like, I'm thinking this, but what do you think? Like, it's literally just imagine a conversation with, again, your boss or your manager or anybody up who's like of authority. Just how you would approach them with like, oh, this is what I'm thinking, but what do you think? You know, you wouldn't insist on your way if you honor and respect that person. So this means holding your plans loosely too, like even as you're planning with God, like allow him to redirect you, to guide you, or to correct you as you go. And if you feel that he is shifting you in a different direction, view this as part of his guidance. It's not that you got it wrong or maybe, you know, you heard wrong or anything necessarily, but sometimes it's not saying like the straight path is like the smooth path. It's just the path that God knows is best for us. So sometimes he will take us to different challenges and trials and ups and downs because it's part of that straight path, if that makes sense, that he knows we need to go on for our good, but also for his glory. So it's really about letting go of that rigid thinking, that black and white thinking, being open to adapting based on what God is speaking to us.
For simplicity's sake too, sometimes it's just listening to your heart. And I don't mean to say that in like a manifesty way, but yes, it is very important to pray for guidance from God and have him reveal things to you and listen to his voice. But God doesn't always speak super clearly to us. And in those times, it's also okay to listen to the desires of your heart, as long as it's not like sinning or, you know, falling into greed or things like that. But I think the people who are listening to this podcast have the maturity to know the difference.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes it's just as simple as just listening, like for a goal, like, oh, okay, I think I want this job. Like, yeah, why? Because it aligns with my gifts. I enjoy it and I love the team. I love the company. Like, that's totally okay. We're kids, right? Like on a playground, God's not going to be like, oh, yeah, don't go to that swing, go to this slide instead. Sometimes he does, but sometimes he just gives us free reign to just pick and choose.
Yeah, because oftentimes we have learned to shut down our own ability to even acknowledge our wants or needs or dreams, you know, and so Jesus really emphasizes like the importance of being childlike, of being like a child. And for children, they just tell you whatever they want. Like, I want this, I want that, The parent's not necessarily going to give the child whatever they want, but like there are many times when it's like, "Oh yeah, you want that? Like I want to make you happy too. I want to see you be joyful and delight in these things." And a lot of our desires and dreams are actually from God. When we are walking with him or when following him, he also shapes our own desires and our hearts to be aligned with him. So yeah, definitely use discernment when it comes to that. But I do agree, like oftentimes we've just forgotten how to dream and how to be like little kids asking God for the things that we want to see happen. That aligns with tip number 2 for how to submit to God is really seek his wisdom from his word. We can seek him in so many ways, but his word is the authority. And so if we're ever questioning, even with what we just talked about, if you're ever unsure, like, is this like aligned with God or not? Just go to his word and like everything in there, like the principles, the truths, the parables, everything can give you so much insight. I would say really look into and reflect on relevant Bible passages that speak to the themes behind your goals, because obviously your goals are not going to be word for word in the Bible to check and be like, is it in the Bible? But think about the themes and the values of your goals. And so, for example, going back to the career thing, if you feel like God wants you to focus on advancing or growing in some aspect of your career, study biblical passages that talk about work, that talk about integrity, talk about purpose, and how to be like on mission with God. Like, what do they say to inform how you approach your work? And this really helps to align your plans and your approach with God's character and his heart and his purposes. So, the second part to this that we talked about, submit. The second part is commit. What is the difference? In Proverbs 16:3, it says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans." This verse really encourages us to bring our plans, goals, and intentions before God and commit them to him. So when you commit things to someone, it's like, this is yours. Like, I dedicate this to you. This is not mine to hold on to. And so it's really an act of trust, to entrust God with our goals, our decisions, our desires, and put them into his hands. And again, seeking his guidance and his will for them. So it doesn't mean that every detail will unfold perfectly the way that we want. Again, it's not about what we perceive as or understand as best, but it promises that God will work with us. He's going to be in it with us. And when it says he will establish your plans, it means he's going to help you get established by his terms, not what you think, like, oh, it has to look this certain way. It's like he will provide, clarity, guidance, wisdom, stability, which means not like you're not going to feel uncertain about things, but it just means he is going to be your firm foundation. So he's going to be in it with you. He will provide that establishment, that stability, and also direction to guide you in the best ways. And so committing really is the second part of dedicating your work. As you work, as you do things for God and with God, you actually invite him in and surrender it all to him at the same time, with a desire to honor God, to serve him, to really glorify him in all you do, and you trust him also with the results. So what does this look like? Two practical ways is actually, it has a lot of similarities with the submit part. So it's not rocket science. But number one is to pray over your endeavors. And so oftentimes we don't even pray. Like, we think, oh, God is too busy, or this is like too minuscule for God. And so we don't bring like our work problems, our meetings, our relationship conflicts, our financial issues to God. Maybe we subconsciously think like, oh, I need to like fix this I need to get my act together before I come to God with that. But the truth is, he wants to be involved in every detail, everything that we do. And so instead of doing things our own way, we can invite God as we begin any new task or mundane activity. Ask God, like, God, where are you right now? Like, help me to see you with me, because you're always with me. So help me to be aware of your presence in this situation. And then surrender it to him. Really submit it again, resubmit. I think this is just a lifelong practice that we all need to do, is always surrender to God, because it's so easy, again, as humans, to take control and to have a tight fist. And then I would say part of the prayer is also asking God than for his perspective, because it's so easy again for us to just do things our way according to our perspective, or focus on the problem that we see right in front of us. But it's so powerful when we acknowledge, like, God, you are with me, you're in this with me. How do you see this situation? How do you see this person that I'm having a difficult time with? How do you see my financial stress, or my financial situation? Like, his word, again, going back to his word, it's so full of so many truths that we can so easily just like override with our own fears and anxieties and lies from the enemy in our heads. And we were just talking about this morning, right? Like, the power of declaration. Like, when you declare things that are life or death, it really affects like how you live, how you think, how you respond, what you do. So you really want to make sure, as you're, inviting God in and submitting all these things to him, committing all these things to him, you are meditating on his truth that guides you and that gives you the right lens to see through, rather than this distorted lens that is so easy for us to get caught up in. So an example is, if you're starting a project at work, or just like organizing some event, or I don't know, like social gathering, you can just say, God, I commit this to you. This is yours. May the work that I do honor you and bring glory to you. You can also remind yourself, why you're doing it. It's not to look good or to have people think you're impressive. You can say, as I'm doing this, I want to ask you to help me use my gifts well, so I can glorify you, so I can reflect Jesus to people, so I can minister to people, like help this be a blessing to others, So as you pray, you're also aligning yourself to God's will. And then the second part of this is, again, similar but a little different, is really trusting God with the results. You really cannot bank your contentment or your satisfaction on everything going as planned, as according to what you want. It's really about being open-handed, like, God, you know what's best. So I let go, I release the pressure for everything to go exactly as I need it, as I want it to, as I feel like I need it to, and to just let go of those specific outcomes, knowing that he knows what is best. So he will bring about the results, the fruit. What our role is to be stewards of the seeds and to be faithful stewards, planting and cultivating. But he's the one who brings what he knows is going to be the best fruit at the right time in the right ways. The last part to all of this, just to wrap this section up, is you should really like goal setting, intention setting, like doing the submit and commit thing. This is not just a once in a year practice. It actually is an ongoing thing.
It should be a daily thing.
Yeah. And so it's not really anything new per se, but I think with the new year, it's oftentimes a really good marker and like milestone, I guess, that is on all of our calendars, where we're like, new year, new me. Like, we're more motivated than usual to really think higher level about our lives and invite God into that. So technically, you can do this anytime. You don't have to wait for the new year to roll around to do this. You can do this in many small ways, like basically all the time. But, this holiday break, most people take some time off, it takes time to slow down. And I think it's just a really good opportunity you don't want to waste by just, again, letting life pass by and then entering the new year just overwhelmed with like all the things you have to react to.
Yeah. So we're going to invite you into our process for annual planning, and it definitely looks differently, as we said at the beginning of this episode, but we still plan. And I actually like the word intention setting rather than goal setting. I feel like goal setting is a little stressful, and it almost is like it's dependent on you to make the goal happen. But I do like intention setting because it's more setting the direction. So
Like
I
what you
actually,
can control.
yeah, it's like what you control. Like my intention is this, or my intention is to date you, versus my goal is to marry you. You can't control that. That's a little kind of a far stretch, but you get my point.
Like, that example makes me think it's good to have goals, but don't measure yourself by whether or not you hit that goal, right? Because I
Yeah,
think I think that's actually an interesting. Yeah, you date with the intent slash goal of getting married,
hopefully.
but you're also not dating and then you're only happy about this if you get married. If that makes sense. Like, you trust the outcome to God, but you go into something with an intent of a longer term outcome. So it's actually, this is very interesting. I think it's like related to like bigger picture. This is what you want to see your life look like, and that's not a bad thing. But to break it down into like what you can control is the intention part, not necessarily the outcome part, right?
Yep.
Like the outcome is part of the desired outcome, desired goal, but what you can control is the intention towards that goal and then releasing the outcome to God.
That's so good. I do want to stay on this dating example. So, for my really practical people out there, you can think of this in OKRs or KPIs. Like, biggest, highest level goal is I want to get married with this person. That's my goal. That's how I know I'm successful. How do I break that down? I am going to date them. We're going to go on a date every week. I'm going to court her. I'm going to pay for her meals. We're going to talk about everything, and then hopefully by the 1 year mark, we can have a discussion about whether we want to get married or not. Yeah, it's simple as
Right.
that.
And
So
and you hold it open with an open hand. You're not like controlling like I need to this has to
yeah,
work out, you know. Yeah.
yeah. So
That actually works against you. So
yeah, like yeah, your intention is this North Star metric that you want to achieve, but it's really out of your control. Like, yeah, aim for that, but be okay with the outcomes on the way and how progress is. And most importantly, the timing of things.
mhm.
I feel like just as humans, we're so impatient, especially these days. We're impatient for results. We're impatient to see things happen in our own timing. And it's usually right now or yesterday. But honestly, I think that's my hardest struggle is just letting go of the outcomes.
Yeah. Sometimes we're impatient, but some other times we're fearful of doing the thing that God's telling us that we should have done yesterday.
That's
So
too patient.
yeah. Yeah, so I think it's yeah, it's really about in anything in life we are just attuned to God's voice, his leading, his timing and his pace, and we trust that and we trust and follow that more than what we just want out of our own anxieties and fears and stuff like that. So, yeah, like let's dive into the questions that we asked this year for our goal set or intention setting as Alex says. So, it was a lot more simplified than our past years like I mentioned because of our unique season and also because God's been really speaking to us about simplicity, aka trusting him over our own efforts. Yeah, again, I just want to reiterate like effective goal slash intention setting is not about creating something really complicated that you need to crack this code. It's often about just being honest and focusing on fewer things but with more conviction. You know, just think about if you had like 10 goals for yourself for the new year and then you're not really bought into them or you don't have a compelling reason for them, it's really hard to stick to them. You would rather have one goal or three goals that really are meaningful to you, that align with how God is speaking to you, and that is actually going to serve you a lot better versus those 10 like goals that you set just because you want to feel like you did a lot.
That's good.
So it's again, it's less about what you do, more about how you do it. As we talk about what we discussed, keep in mind again, like we're doing this with the heart of submit and commit, with the posture of giving it to God and following His direction. So the first part, and Alex will talk about the second part. It's really only two parts. It's very simple, not a 10-step plan, but a two-phase structure, I guess, a loose outline. So number one is looking back. God is a storyteller. God is an author, and so it's so helpful to look back and see like what is the story that He's been writing to inform my understanding of the next chapter. So we reflect, we look back, what are some of the good things that surprised me this year? We asked each other that, like, what were some good things that surprised you and that you're thankful for, you know, that you didn't expect, and use the opportunity just to reflect and give thanks to God. Like, it's so easy for us to miss out on all the blessings and how faithful God is, but this helps us to anchor ourselves in God's goodness and his faithfulness and also acknowledge like, oh wow, all these great things happen. Like, don't miss out on that, you know? And it also can reveal things to you as you process, well, which we'll explain. The second part of reflection is what was the biggest challenge that surprised you and what did you learn or are learning from it? And it's really important to focus on the learning part because it's so easy for us to be like, oh, this happened and it sucked. But ultimately, like, how did you grow? How are you growing from the things that that happen to you that you may not have expected, that are not necessarily opposite of good things, by the way. It's just a different form of a good thing that God uses to refine us. So again, looking back, what were the good things that surprised you, and what was the biggest challenge that surprised you, and what did you learn from that?
And looking forward, or goal slash intention setting, we kept it really, really simple. It's really just asking God, what has He been prompting us or leading us into? What's He been revealing in our hearts? Pick up to 3 areas in your life where God has really been directing your attention, and just ask yourself, what do I want to see happen in next year? And be super specific about it. And so some key areas here, and I'm just listing, this is definitely not like a comprehensive list or anything, but these are like big buckets for us. Number one is family and marriage, kids. Second is work. Third is your faith or your relationship with God. How's that been going? How's your times with Him? How have you been hearing from Him? How have you been obedient to Him? Fourth
These
is,
are not in order of importance, by the way.
yeah, yeah, this is this.
Faith would be number one, of course.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Fourth is friends slash community. How's my relationships with people? Do I have close friends? Do I have people that I can call or vent to? Five is finances. And I do want to talk about finances a little bit just because it's a little bit more personal to me. There's a ton of resources out there on how to grow money, how to grow wealth. There's just too many. But for us as Christians, we have the Holy Spirit. So we plan around finances differently than how the rest of the world does. So, some really practical things is if you're in like a squeeze season, that I like to say, or just kind of getting by, you're just like scraping by. Honestly, like ask yourself, how can I believe and trust God for more? And or how can I increase my income or reduce expenses? If you have an abundance, but you feel like money is more of your master versus you're the master of your money, ask God, how can I let go of the grip of materialism and replace it with generosity? And for me, it was more asking, what are some of the things that really align with my heart? What are the causes that align more with my heart and also God's heart as well? Some examples could be like poverty alleviation, orphans and widows, evangelism, etc. And then the last area is health. This is all encompassing. This is physical health, mental health, and emotional health. Honestly, spiritual health too. Health is really important because it's like the vehicle that we get to live our lives, like our bodies, our minds, our hearts. It's super important that we stay healthy in a way that we can serve the Lord and carry out His mission and purpose for our lives.
Yeah, again, these are not all encompassing. These are just examples of categories. You can come up with your own, whatever God is really just highlighting to you. And I just want to add, I think why we found it pretty easy to just like quickly go through this too is because we're always thinking about these things on a consistent basis. It's not like once a year rolls around, we're like, oh shoot, what does God want me to grow in? It's like the more you do this consistently, the more you build it in as a daily habit and routine of asking God how He's speaking to you, what He's highlighting to you, how He wants you to grow, and what He wants you to focus on and cultivate. This stuff is super easy. This stuff just becomes a summary of what He's already been doing, honestly. And it's just like recapping to solidify for the next year. Like if you find this challenging, like there's no shame around that, but I would say I would really encourage you to start building this into as a regular practice. Like it doesn't have to be super complicated or long, but just like start daily, like in your prayer times, quiet times with God, to just be attuned to like, how is God speaking to me, what is He highlighting to me, or throughout your days, like pay attention to how He's speaking to you, what He's teaching you, showing you. And then doing stuff like this will be easy peasy. So again, just to reiterate, you look back and reflect on the good things and the challenge, the lessons from the challenge. And then when you look forward, you just pick, up to, we suggest up to 3 areas to not overwhelm yourself, but what has God basically already been directing your attention to? What is He prompting in you, showing you? What is He inviting you to do to continue cultivating those areas and growing in those ways? So for us, we talked a lot, mostly honestly, about family, because becoming new parents is a big deal. Specifically, we asked what kind of parent, what kind of spouse do we want to show up as? Is our intention going to be for the next year? Our hope and our goal is to be this kind of parent, this kind of spouse for each other. For work or business, it's like, what do you feel like God is challenging you in to grow in that area too? And then for us, we talked a lot about our relationship with God too, like which is actually entwined in all of this. Like faith, relationship with God is not a separate category per se, but just like marriage, it's like marriage affects every aspect of your life, but it's like intentionally cultivating your relationship with God, your trust in him, your faith, like what can you do? For me, a lot of it was tied together where a big theme that we identified for me for all these areas we talked about was just surrender and honestly grace. And I just kind of cringe at that because I'm like, ah, so cliche and predictable. My name is Grace. Our program is Rhythms of Grace. We talk about grace so much, but I guess there's a reason why God keeps highlighting it to me over and over in all these different areas is I really feel like he wants to continue challenging me, stretching me to grow in understanding of living by grace, not just in work, not just in pregnancy or other these specific areas, but in all areas, and especially I think as a mom, because I know this is a big challenge for a lot of new, especially first time new moms.
Because you want to do everything right.
Right, yeah. And I think a lot of women in general just put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like get everything right, do everything well, do it all, and be like this picture perfect mom. And I just know that that is one area that I want to be intentional about not letting fear, anxiety, unrealistic expectations rob me of the joy of just being present, of just being embracing my own unique style of parenting and my calling as a mom and as a wife in this season to be present with our family. So yeah, just sharing a little bit about mine.
That's good. So we all know now that you've listened this far, setting goals is great. Intention setting is great. But there is one big thing in the way, and those are blockers from your intention and your goals. So I do want to talk about blockers. And blockers are pretty much things that block your progress. And I want to share a few questions that have helped me process a lot of my goals and what's been blocking me. And this is really from the book Rebel by Graham Cochran. And he talks about an inner story audit, which is pretty much like, what am I believing? And so I'm just going to share, like, super personally, just like kind of opening up my journal a little bit. So, just to give an example, actually, I did this in the in around the middle of this year, actually in the summer more specifically. I said that in the area of finances, I want to feel content and have peace regardless of how much money is in my bank account or how much my net worth is. So I did an inner story audit, and there's a list of questions that I asked myself. And so this is going to get real personal, but if you're listening, write this down. So the first question to do an inner story audit of what you're believing. First question is, what is the story I'm telling myself about X? So for me, it's what's the story I'm telling myself about money? Just going to give you some examples. So the story I'm telling myself about money is I need to always be saving money and being frugal, or money is scarce, or I need to stay on course or get ahead of my peers at all times. And buying nice things is not very Christian of me. I need to be humble about my materials. That's a little bit about the story I'm telling myself. So, first question, what's the story I'm telling myself about X area of life? Second question is, what are the daily actions or habits that I'm taking that reinforce that story? So for me, it's choosing not to spend money in nicer restaurants despite having X amount of money. It's being anxious and fearful that I'm, quote unquote, wasting money by turning on the AC at night. That's super personal.
Alex looks at me because we had some controversial discussions about that during the summer when it was really hot.
Yep. Third question is, who are the people around me who are negatively reinforcing the story I'm telling myself? I wrote down a list of people. I even said Instagram and LinkedIn. Next question, what are the results I'm getting from telling myself this story? And I said stress, fear, anxiety. I feel stuck. I'm feeling trapped. I'm not being able to sleep very well at night. There's tension between Grace and me. Okay, this is a super important question. What else could be as true, if not more true, than the story I'm telling myself? And one example is, just because people make more money doesn't mean that they have peace of mind. maybe they're just anxious and as fearful as me. I never thought of that. So, super great
So
question.
true.
And then the last question is, what are the 3 to 5 negative thoughts, habits, or people that I need to eliminate from my day to day life? So I listed out some people, I listed out some negative thoughts around this story I'm telling. Some examples are, I need to get rid of, I won't ever have enough. I need to be as frugal and save as much as possible to create as much safety and security. Or other people's financial and professional success means I'm lesser than them. So, those are some example questions that you can ask yourself to do an audit of the story that you're telling yourself. So, set an intention or a goal, pick an area that's really meaningful for you, and go down these lists of questions. And the most important thing is be honest. When I wrote that down, some of that stuff was super cringy.
Even though it's cringy, it's good because it reveals to you the truth of what you believe, like the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the truth will set you free.
right. Yeah, I think this goes back to what we talk a lot about on the podcast and in our programs and our coaching is like the subconscious narratives, subconscious belief systems, subconscious scripts that we are all operating by. And so if we are not, intentional about questioning those things, it is so easy for us to just live on autopilot according to these dysfunctional ways of thinking that are based on lies, based on fears or unresolved trauma or unresolved pain versus like the truth of who God says we are, how God made us to be and what he actually desires for us to live by. I would say really practically, like as a kind of a bonus step to wrap all of this up before we also tell you about a really great resource that wraps all of this up for you. I just want to add is to write your goals down. Like it's so easy for us to just be like, "Oh, let me just like think about this in the car." And that's great, but it really helps. Like it's scientifically proven when you write things down, it helps you process. It helps you get your thoughts out, get more clear. So you actually get more clarity as you're processing on paper. So you want to write these things down, put them somewhere that you can see, like visually to remind yourself as a visual cue. Again, it seems like very non-essential sometimes. We're like, "Oh, why would I put it up? Like that seems so extra." But trust me, like putting visual cues up actually works so well to remind yourself on a daily consistent basis of what you're trying to do with your life. Like what do you believe about your situation and even affirmations based on the Bible and things like that. And then also share them with somebody who, you trust, who can keep you accountable, who loves you, wants the best for you. For us, I guess that was built in when we were discussing this over dinner and sharing with each other. But yeah, I would say the more you can just put this more concretely, the more you'll also be able to motivate yourself to actually follow through. So, the resource I was talking about is our 2025 goal setting guide. Although I think should I rename it to be intentions?
Intention setting guide.
But I don't know, like part of me feels like intention has been hijacked by the secular world of like setting intentions and it's like not really prayerful. But
Yeah, yeah. It's
well,
not very for overachievers.
well,
It's not propelling.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
we'll figure it out.
maybe we'll keep it goal setting guide, but just know for you insiders,
Goal setting parentheses intention guide.
for you guys who are listening to this episode, you understand actually the intention behind the goal setting guide is to talk about intentions more than goals, according to how we were defining them. But anyway, so how this goal setting guide started was a couple years ago. I put together something like pretty last minute before me and Alex went to like a coffee shop, I think, to start doing this as we do at the end of each year. Because prior to that, we were kind of just scrambling and piecemealing things together. And I was like, let me just put together a simple guide. We could just go through it. And then I was like, why don't I just share this and maybe other people will find it helpful? Surprisingly, a lot of people have found it helpful. And I was so encouraged by that because I was like, oh, wow, other people really need this resource. So the following years, I just continued to like improve on it, update it, adjust it as we tested it ourselves and saw like what worked well and what didn't. And so the reason, again, why this year's guide looks different and will be a lot more simplified compared to previous versions is because that's what's been working for us is like simplifying it down, creating these like bare bones questions, but really focusing more again on the heart, the posture, the why versus doing all of these like 10 things. And we'll also include the blocker questions as well. So you can also go through those in the guide. But yeah, we really feel like this tool will help you, really hone in on how God is speaking to you, what He wants you to continue cultivating and focusing on and growing in. And if it does help you, we would love to hear. Like, please let us know your feedback, your experiences. You can also share it with friends and family and do it all together if you want. We've heard people like putting it on their TVs and doing it together as a family, which is so amazing and so beautiful. So, yeah, please share your testimonies with us in Apple Podcast reviews or YouTube comments. And last but not least, we also recently ish released a free masterclass called How to Thrive at Work from Sustainable Rest. If you struggle with being peace filled and, just going to work without feeling this dread, this pit in your stomach, we really, really recommend that you take advantage of this free masterclass, especially going into the new year. You do not want to carry your toxic relationship with work, your unhealthy work patterns with you into the new year. This is such a great opportunity to kind of reset, redefine how you're going to relate with work, how you're going to go into work with purpose, with peace, with joy, and no longer have work kind of like dictate your happiness or your mental emotional health. So we really, really encourage you to take advantage of that and really invest in yourself and your future generations because it's not going to happen by itself. We don't thrive by just passively sitting on the sidelines hoping things will get better. We have to do the things that God is challenging us and inviting us into to partner with Him as He grows us, as He wants to bless us. He also wants our steps of active faith and trust. And so that means doing whatever it takes to invest in yourself, your growth, your health, your mental, emotional, spiritual health, just like Alex said. And yeah, just not expecting things to just happen to you by not doing anything about it.
Yeah. So if you struggle with just the pressure that you put on yourself, or you feel constantly stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, just about life in general, it doesn't have to be about work, but usually people struggle with work the most and it just affects a lot of things. So if you're constantly feeling those things, we made this just for you.
Well, that was a very meaty episode. I think that was a lot more than we expected, but hopefully you found it helpful. And yeah, any last words as we close this pre baby chapter? And we'll come back in TBD time, but it's kind of bittersweet.
Yeah. How about we pray for people?
Okay.
Lord, thank you so much for 2024. Thank you for the story that you've been writing in our lives and will continue to write into 2025 and beyond. Thank you for whoever is listening to this. I just pray that you bless them tremendously, that you protect them, protect their loved ones, their families, and I pray for just supernatural favor over their lives. I pray that you give them wisdom to discern what to do in the next year, where to set their intentions and their goals. And I pray that you give them divine revelation and wisdom in all areas of their lives. Will you nudge their heart? Will you direct their steps and help them to just trust you every step of the way and to depend on you for the results, to depend on you and trust you in the timing of things, and to wholeheartedly trust their lives into your hands, God? You love all these people so, so much. You care about every detail of their lives. You care about the work struggles, you care about marriage struggles, you care about the good things that have happened in their lives. And so you love them so much. You know every hair on our head. So I pray a blessing to everyone who is listening to this episode. And I pray that this new year will be just filled with so much fruit and so much joy and peace. And I pray that you just put wind behind their backs to propel them forward into their purpose and destiny. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. See you guys. We are so grateful you joined us for this conversation. We hope it encouraged you and spoke to you. And we would love to invite you, if you haven't yet, to join our free email newsletter, because that's the best way not just to know about our new episodes, but also super exciting new resources that we're working on behind the scenes that we cannot wait to get into your hands. And you will be the first to know and get access to. So make sure to join our newsletter at withthetrans.com/email, or you can go to link in the description below, and we'll see you in the next one.